Good morning, everybody. Stage 2 is here. It is currently 5:18 a.m. I finally finished my power rankings for Stage 2, and I thought I'd share them with you at least in a video format because last time it was a late night cram similar to this one, and I wrote it, and it was painful. Very, very painful, so I figured I'd just kind of ramble with some evening coffee. Got my little mug. You may have seen it on Tactical Crouch and whatnot. Maybe featured in some other videos. I don't know. Maybe I'll make a mug one day. Who knows? Who knows? But Stage 2, it is here. Vancouver Titans being some sick Gosu players. Capping Stage 1 with a nice cherry on top with that shock grand final, which to me has to go down in the history books as one of the better finals. It felt like a seasonal final, felt like an Apex final. One of my top 10 at least favorite matches in the history of Overwatch. So definitely check that out if you haven't already. And let's get into some of these spicy predictions because I don't think your top 5 and my top 5 are very similar, and we'll get into why. So let's look at some of the pillars of why, or how I'm conceptualizing. Where's my pen? We need a pen. I'm known for this. It helps me think. So let's look at some of these pillars. I think GOATs early is going to be relevant. And what do I mean by that? So I don't necessarily think that Rhine GOATs is going to kind of stay around too terribly much. I think most of this is going to be moats, floats, whatever you want to call it. It's that Winston, Philadelphia style GOATs. Again, I say Philadelphia. Maybe that's a hint at, how high they are. Who knows? But I think strong Winston play, strong Orisa play is going to be very important. We saw on Oversight last night some hints that bunker comps are going to be coming around, and that was something that I wanted to hint at, but I wasn't necessarily too confident in, I would say. When you saw Baptiste come out, you saw the Orisa changes, you saw some of the damage changes to some of the heroes, notably Junkrat, notably the armor changes on Soldier, buffs to Soldier. I started to, conceptualize maybe like a Junkrat Soldier high ground comp with Baptiste Orisa, something like that. Apparently I'm hearing Bastion might be coming back. Who knows? Stay tuned on that. We might see this later today. But overall, I think GOATs will still be a prevalent comp in week 1 and start to kind of taper off in popularity, I would say, because it is so heavily practiced from Stage 1, and teams are, there's an attachment to the meta that you don't just want to let go, and teams are going to have a hard time letting go of that because you have sunk so much practice time into it and you have so much experience with it that it's probably succeeding in practice, whereas other comps, like some of these DPS comps that we've seen thrown around, may not be as successful. So there's definitely some worry there with some of these teams. Some teams just don't play week 1, so I think that is factored into this list. If you haven't played week 1 and you don't necessarily meet some of these other criteria, I think that you've gotten a nice little bump up. You got some extra credit points, I would say. I think flexibility, we said it last stage, didn't really come true. That flex at the Diva Zarya flex tank role, that off tank role, was going to be important. I think flexibility at all roles is going to be important. You're going to need to play the Winston. You're going to need to play the Orisa. You might still need to play the Rhine. Those are going to be. This is going to be an interesting meta for tanks in particular, because there's 3 heroes that have a possibility of being very, very, prevalent within this stage. And if you can't play one of them, and you might excel at another, we could see some styles develop. This is going to be a very exciting stage, or at least hopefully. I have some hopes that this should be an exciting stage. So flexibility at all roles, whether it be flex support, DPS characters are going to be played. Praise all the non-GOATs. We're going to see a lot of non-tank, non-3-3 compositions, I think, this stage. So be on the lookout for that. So flexibility is going to be very important. On top of that, we're hearing stirrings of triple DPS coming back in. And while I was never big on putting a foot forward for DPS centric teams, I think this might be a metagame where DPS-centric teams are going to excel because you're going to have all of these skirmish battles and this chaos. And if you just have somebody like a Carpe like a Pine, like a striker that can just pop off and just have these amazing performances, you're going to do well. If that becomes the case, and I think it is. The last pillar, I think, is going to be the return of the carry flex supports. So your Gen X, Violets, Shoes, people of that nature, right? Neko, for instance. Moving them to Baptiste, moving them to Ana, moving them back to their Zen. This not flank-heavy Zen, but you're going to see a return to that Jonek era of Zenyatta. In some cases, it depends on exactly what we see. Again, early on, we still might see that very kind of standard, shield pressure Zenyatta, focusing on trying to discord correct targets and calling them out. Whereas later on in the stage, we could see more DPS-centric Zenyatta's come in and flourish a little bit more. But there again, I think we'll see a lot more Ana, and obviously Baptiste is here, so we'll have to see exactly who plays that and how successful that is. I think the flex supports are probably going to be playing it, just based on who historically has been more mechanically proficient. That's not to say every main support, I'm sure there's some main support out there that can frag with the best of them, but I think for the most part, I'm going to be handing that over to the flex support for again, maybe there's a comp that they play both, and who knows, right? But that's just kind of how my criteria have played out this evening and this late night cram session. And let's get into the 1 to 20 or the 20 to 1. We'll start from the back, right? We'll start from the back to front. And coming in at a pretty rough 20th place, it's going to be the Florida Mayhem. Shouldn't surprise many of you. This team has looked rough. Only team to lose to Justice. I don't see them finding any success here. Possibly Saya player coming out. I think he's the only bright light for this team. Their schedule is London, Philadelphia, Paris, New York, Gladiators, Shanghai, Dallas. It's not an easy stage for them. It's going to be rough. I think that they don't really have much of a chance, to be honest with you. I don't think they win a game, to be completely fair. I think I mentioned on Tactical Crouch that I thought Houston was going to be in this spot. But upon further study and comparison, I think that Florida may go winless this stage. It's not looking good for them. Internally, doesn't sound good. On paper, doesn't look good. I don't think they're going to squeak out an upset win over a Philadelphia this stage because of how different it's going to be. It's not going to be as parity driven as week 2, week 3 of stage 1 was with the GOATs meta and how fine those edges were, if that makes sense. It seemed like teams weren't necessarily, I think Philly took a long time to develop that comfort within stage 1. So Florida, hate to say it, but you're going to be holding out rank 20. I'm going to try and get through these because 20 spots, so trying to alleviate some time to each team and try to even that out. So Florida 20 shouldn't be a surprise. Hard schedule, hard stage. Saya player might pop off, who knows? But just kind of a mishmash roster that I don't see them finding any success in this metagame. Outlaws at 19. I don't like their schedule. I'll put it bluntly. Vancouver, Philadelphia, Shanghai, Seoul, Dallas, Guangzhou Charge, London is their schedule. That's rough. That is a rough schedule. I will say, if there was going to be a metagame, I think this may allow them to move Muma onto Wrecking Ball a little bit more. I think that possibly you could see Jake return to a Soldier 76 pick, maybe play Pharah. He has that vocal ability. I don't think they played GOATs very well. I think they started to get something rolling with a Sombra late, but it's rough. Dante Jake, I don't hate that DPS duo, though. I really don't. They could pull something off with the Sombra Soldier. Sombra Pharah comps might be coming back, so be on the lookout for that. But all in all, I think the schedule really puts a hamper on them. I think if the schedule was a little bit lighter, I'd be much more willing to move them up. I really don't think they'll be as bad as my power ranking kind of places them. But just because the schedule is fairly brutal, I don't see them squeaking out too many wins. They might be able to take Dallas at home because this is the stage that Dallas is going to be having those the what is it called, the Homestead games. I believe Dallas and Houston play, so Houston might be able to squeak something at in Texas. So it's possible, but it's rough. I think momentum not going to be in their favor throughout the entire stage. The schedule's rough. Better than what my power ranking has them placed, because their DPS duo and Muma are going to do well. I think their flex support's still weak. It's just the lay of the land, I think, comparatively throughout the pool. One of the weaker flex supports. And Raucus, Boink still has been statistically very, very good. I posted an article recently talking about some of the best performers. Boink's still a statistical outlier out there on the Lucio, still doing the dang thing. Can they coalesce together quick enough and adapt to this meta in time? I don't know. I really don't know, and I don't think the schedule is going to allow for them to at least have a level head going into this. I think this is going to be rough. Teams do start to crumble when things are not going their way, and magically all the problems disappear when things are going well. So if they can start off, their stage openers against Vancouver. We'll see where Vancouver places in my power rankings, but it's going to be rough for them. So Houston at 19 is going to, rough. I can't say it enough, right? So we've got Washington Justice surprisingly edging out 2 slots, bumping up to 18. Again, rough schedule. They've made the move. Arc is coming in. I believe Fozix is actually going back home to stream, so it seems like Arc is just being slotted in, which again is a benefit to them. I've been on a couple talk shows recently. It is a benefit, but they have too many other problems for me to move them up higher. I do think Otto is going to flourish in this metagame. Thank God, or thank whoever you praise as a deity, the universe, whatever. Washington is going to find a little bit more success here. They started to kind of get it together late. I think Giannis on Winston is going to be a little bit more of a comfort pick for him and the team. Maybe even Wizard Chung enjoying a dive metagame a little bit more. So maybe we see a wrecking ball out of them. I don't really know, but I think just based on the schedule alone, they do have a match against Valiant. So we have Toronto, Chengdu, New York, Atlanta, Valiant, Shanghai, Boston. So I think they probably can par well versus Valiant, possibly, right? That's kind of a question mark for me, but I think their schedule alone is a little bit lighter. It's possible that they look better this stage than last. Hopefully they've made they've taken stage 1, in stride, because it was so difficult for them that the schedule was stacked. So hopefully Washington can improve a little bit in the post-stage trade kerfuffles, right? Speaking of the Valiant, I have them at 17. Valiant at 17. Again, San Francisco, Atlanta Gladiators, Washington, Dallas, Seoul, Chengdu as a schedule is not easy. That is still pretty rough. And lo and behold, they really didn't make any trades. I talked about them really not doing much of anything in my kind of rebuilding article for them. I mentioned that I'd be doing more of them than I actually did, but maybe we'll pace them out. Maybe we'll do Florida next for this stage, and maybe next stage we'll do somebody else. But Valiant really hasn't made any changes. They've moved packing in. Apparently, allegedly, there was going to be trades that for one reason or another didn't happen. What is this team going to look like? Apparently Kareev may be going back to support for whatever reason, to move KSF into the roster, perhaps. I don't know. But I can't imagine it's anything good. Will it be better than last stage? It's possible. but it's not likely. I think it's going to be marginal success over last stage. It's still going to be rough for them, and that's why I have them at 17. One spot above them is the Paris Eternal. Again, these schedules for some of these bottom tier teams play a big role in where I think they're going to fall out. But I think Paris might have, okay, to that credit, I think Houston has a chance to be a little bit higher than some of these other teams. They could just blow past Washington in some of their games, but I think that schedule was very difficult comparatively. Whereas Paris, they do have some of those same traits where I think, Danya can come in. I think people forget that he's even on this team, and he is very good at, he has some solid DPS picks behind him. We could see Shadowburn playing the Pharah. I've been critical of it, but it is serviceable. It's inconsistent for the most part, but it's serviceable. It's something that they can rely on. He has the Genji in his back pocket. Nico can play multiple things. This team can find success, but they couldn't find success when they should have, right? Last stage, this was their metagame, and they kind of fell flat on their face. Maybe coaching restructuring may have helped them. I have no idea, but pretty hard schedule, I'd say. And it's not looking good in terms of metagame. They didn't, again, I can't really reiterate this enough. They didn't play well last stage, and now we're changing things up, and I'm just supposed to assume that they're going to get better off of it. I don't know. It could be a mentality reset. That's probably something that they're looking forward to. Just half the break, come into it, fresh eyes. But I don't see them succeeding, and that's why I've got them at 16. To the dismay of the Boston Uprising fans, I have Boston at 15. Schedule looking like Atlanta, Toronto, Hangzhou Spark, London, Vancouver Gladiators, Washington, which isn't too bad. And with the acquisition or the trade of Note and RCK, this allows them a little bit more flexibility at that off-tank role, which I think is going to be beneficial for them. I count out the Boston Uprising a lot. I will say that much. They seem to prove everybody wrong when you put them low, and it's possible that this happens again. They might be able to be higher, but in terms of just power on paper, I don't know how quickly this roster is going to coalesce together. Again, reports said that they were going to be shifting the roster around come post-stage, break period. Has that changed anything within the team? Was there a practice not necessarily as intensive in the off, within this week break? I don't know. Was it 2 weeks? Who knows? That break period with the potential alleged roster movements may have thrown a wrench into plans. I don't know. Color Hex didn't look great on Zarya. Wasn't bad, I'd say. Wasn't a bad Zarya, but from my understanding, he was much more the DPS player. Could be unlocked here. Aim God's still in there doing the dang thing. Fusions on Monkey have my question marks. Not a bad Monkey, very serviceable, but had some success on British Hurricane, so I don't know exactly how he's going to pair out versus everybody in the league. So that's why I have them at 15. Did I say 16? I'm at 15. My mistake. You'll see it I'll just put the list in the description box. I can't count. It's early. I haven't slept yet. I have coffee. Sue me, okay? So at 14, I've got the Atlanta Reign. I think the DeFran departure is going to hurt them a tiny bit. I think people are really sleeping on the potential that Baby brings to this team. I think he's very vocal. I think he's flexible, more flexible than I think people are giving him credit for. Multiple talk shows have said, he shares a similar hero pool to Enlair. And while they do share some very comfort heroes in the Widowmakers and the Hitscan players or characters, Baby Bay does have some pocket projectile DPS and some tank play that I think people aren't necessarily remembering. If you look back on Winston's Lab, nice plug for all you stat fiends out there, his Pharah play, excuse me, his Pharah play was actually pretty highly rated. Now, that could be a stylistic thing. I haven't gone back and checked, so that could be, again, don't sue me. statistically speaking, his VAR is solid, right? So he has some projectile to him. He's very vocal, which is something that I think is going to benefit Atlanta a great deal. I just don't know to what degree. And I'm not necessarily too much willing to kind of put them forward in that discussion. So I think this is a nice sweet spot for them. Defiant is going to be missed, even though he's going to be streamed, so, go check out his stream. He's streaming for Atlanta right now, I believe. So, this is going to be an interesting stage for them. I think if they can rally around Baby Bay and his calling, which again, I know from speaking to league sources is almost too much, or at least at the start of the season 1, it was almost too much calling, and they had to actually reel him back a little bit. So he's worked with Brad before. This team is good in general. I just need to see it on paper. I need to see what this X Factor Baby Bay can bring. Is he as dynamic? Is he as explosive as Defiant could have been in this stage? I don't know. I don't think he's too far down below that. Depending on how the meta shakes out, if Soldier 76 comes back, that is a big comfort pick for him. Lovingly, I wrote an article way back when, I think in like early 2017, talking about how he was like an aimbot, or not that he was an aimbot, but he had such good tracking that he looked like he was cheating, just kind of add a little bit of humor to the article. And I think I got chewed up on Reddit and brought up some past transgressions that he had. But Atlanta will do okay. Not going to be as good as last stage, but they're going to do just fine, I think. Another team that I think could do better than what I expect and what we all expect, but it's hard to argue. It's hard to move them around. We can't, we played off of the hearsay beforehand for a lot of people, is the Hangzhou Spark. The Hangzhou Spark, reportedly, allegedly, were playing some very strange DPS compositions in the preseason. That's why a lot of people were putting them so highly. This also included Sashin, who was a late addition to the team, from my understanding. Now they have Sashin. Now they have the chance to play these weird, wonky DPS comps. Will we see that Spark come out? I don't know. This is all what ifs. What we do know is that last stage, they were uncoordinated, mechanically good, and have historical precedents to be able to play in some of these compositions. We talk about Godsby, we look at IDK, Gusha, No Smite. All should do well this stage. Bazzi, if I'm remembering that correctly. Yes, I think so. Will find success here. I just need to see it on paper first. So, or in actuality. But on paper, I think they could do better. So that's why I have them slightly above the Atlanta Reign at the moment. Shanghai Dragons coming in wherever I am in the list at this point. Let me scroll up for a second. I have this on a little document. Where is Shanghai? Shanghai is 12. Okay. So Spark was 13. Caster math. So Shanghai at 12. This is a team that showed DPS compositions early in stage 1, relied on it, took Vancouver. If you go back and watch their matches early, I think early on in the stage, had some decent parity with them on specifically the control map. I think it was Busan. Vancouver looked a little shaky. Now, is that a stylistic difference? Is that Vancouver, not being as trying as much? I've heard that being thrown around. Those are fair asterisks to put over that match. But when we see Shanghai playing the London Spitfire later on in that stage, we see how potent they can be. We can see DM really start to shine, and I think he's just going to continue. I see this team doing very well for themselves, but not as well as some of these other teams. So I think they're going to do better than they did last stage. Actually, let me pull that up real quick. Let me see exactly where some of these teams have fit. Should have done that with some other teams, but whatever. It's 5 a.m. Sue me, okay? So Shanghai in stage 1 finished 13th. So a slight improvement, I'd say. A slight improvement. Schedule-wise, Gladiators, New York, Chengdu, Florida, Houston, Washington, San Francisco. Not too hard, I'd say. Still pretty... They could make playoffs, I would say. With that kind of schedule, I think they could easily make playoffs. On paper, though, I have more questions on their backline. Who's playing flex tank for them now? I don't know. We'll have to see. This is going to be kind of like full bloom Shanghai. There's no question marks around, Gamsu not, necessarily being with the team for very long. He's had a full stage. This should be the time where if they're going to perform, this is going to be it. There again, those are a lot of what ifs on paper. I think they're going to improve because this kind of plays within their wheelhouse a little bit, and that's going to be something that we're going to have to, thematically, this is going to be a return for a lot of teams. I just don't know if Shanghai have that kind of power behind them. DM is powerful, 100%, not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is other teams are comparably powerful, if not more so, if that makes sense. Hopefully it does. And that's why them are at, where am I, 12? 12, yes, Shanghai at 12, okay. 11, get a footnote here. 11, Dallas Fuel, another team. Could be making playoffs. Almost should be making playoffs. We've got Toronto, Paris, Vancouver, Seoul, Valiant, Houston, Florida. Not a terrible schedule for them. I think their stage playoff dreams rely on a few key players. I think they need Unko to really be able to maintain his historic relevancy? Something. He needs to be potent in this meta, and we know he can be. I just need to see it, right? If that makes sense. He needs to be the same Unko he has been for the last, 3 years. Hopefully he can bring in that Baptiste and Isirable as long as if I'm figuring out where he's going to be played. I think it's going to be on the flex support position. So hopefully Unko can play that. I wouldn't see why he wouldn't. I think his Ana's stellar as well. I think he's going to be a big backbone for this team. AKM is making some beautiful returns in stage 1 for the Dallas Fuel. They brought him in early in season 1. I think it was a big question mark. Reportedly, contenders teams weren't necessarily super hot on him. Now, he's making tweets. He's catching fire again. He's more confident than ever. Is this the return of the AKM soldier? Is this the return of the old rogue kind of mentality, that French core that was so dominant? We've got Demon back in. It's a possibility. So I think, those Frenchies on this team are going to be a serious threat to these playoff contenders. And last but not least, if we're talking about DPS and chaos and carry threats, you cannot ignore effect in this composition. You can't ignore effect in this Dallas Fuel squad with a schedule that can get them rolling. That can, they have some buffer room towards the end there. Valiant, Houston, Florida. Those are some bye rounds. Those are some bye weeks almost. If effect comes in looking like he has historically done. And I think that's something that the Dallas Fuel, if things don't go well this stage, I think they have to do some restructuring because I need to see some less historic relevance, right? Effect, if they can get him online, if they can get him on some of those comfort picks, I think this kid could be one of the best players in the world in this metagame. We'll just have to see what happens. Is he going to play the same style of Tracer he once did in Apex? What was it? Season 3? That super flank, almost solo style Tracer? Probably not. What effect are we going to see? That's going to be the big question. Hopefully the desk on the Overwatch League throw some shade his way and he can go Hulk mode and destroy some people towards the end of this. Again, Toronto match early. It's close. I don't think it's as cut and dry as people might expect. I think Toronto are going to put up a fight, but it's going to be a close one. So they're going to have to hit the ground running early, I think, if they're going to have that stage playoff dream alive. Speaking of the Toronto Defiant, we've got some interesting notes about them at number 10. But first, let's talk about their schedule. We've got Washington, Boston, Philadelphia, Dallas, Shock, Vancouver, Paris as their schedule, which isn't rough. But what is rough is the internals for this team. With Stellar gone, Asher is probably going to be seeing some play. We haven't heard exactly who they're signing as his replacement. They've teased some things on Twitter. There's some speculation about some contenders players. Who knows? But moving Asher in, is that going to change the dynamic of the team? We saw how much Neko improved the team. Is losing Stellar going to affect them? Hard to say, but there are some question marks there. I want to see more from Yakpung. His Reinhardt was okay. I will say for this rookie team, freshman's coming in, I thought his Reinhardt was better than what I think people give credit for. Is his Winston or Orisa going to match that same level? I don't know. I need to see exactly where he is on that, so I have more question marks there. But I will say their flexibility is going to make up for some of those deficiencies, those holes in some of their game plans. I think this is a very flexible team. You've got Ivy, you've got Envy, that can be, very diverse in their hero pools. We saw Envy playing some DPS in some of their Nepal games, and Ivy historically has been fairly, projectile focused, but has shown to be able to play a myriad of different things. So I think that where they have some question marks, I think their flexibility is going to really kind of shine. And then they've got Neko. I hear he's playing pretty good Overwatch, and apparently he's a pretty good Overwatch player. So I don't see them having a deficiency in that role. I think, again, if we go back to those pillars, having a strong flex support, Defiant's got a strong flex support, one of the best in Season 1. So I think they lock themselves in a nice 10th. So breaking into the upper middle of the pack, we have the Philadelphia Fusion, who, again, have the potential to be more than I expect them to be. Their schedule is New York, Florida, Toronto, London, New York again, Houston, and Shock. This is a team that in Stage 1 tried to push the Winston floats, moats, whatever the hell you want to call it, a little bit more. Or I don't even think they push it as much as they could have. I think I actually wish they would have run it more and been more stylistic about it to throw teams off. I don't think their Rhine Goats was that bad. It wasn't great. But they seem to have that that comfort in Sato's Winston. He's known for it. Why not use it? Now they can. They can use it without kind of falling behind the 8-ball here. Not only that, but if we're talking about DPS, we're talking about triple DPS metas, that sounds to me like a return to this chaotic, skirmish, hit scan-esque Season 1 playoff meta. Not similar in terms of strategies and hero picks, but in terms of like very broad how the game is going to look. And I think Carpe and EQO are going to flourish in this meta. How else they go about that, I'm not entirely too sure. I think they have a potential to make a playoff stab in the stage. But they're always inconsistent. They drop games they shouldn't. Sometimes things go awry. Sometimes, things are perfect when they shouldn't be. I need to see more consistency out of them. They haven't made any moves. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I think they've done fine. If they can make it to playoffs, they'll get that playoffs buff that they seem to always find and do better. But the regular season, the regular Stage 2 for them should be typical. I think it's going to be a little bit inconsistent. Maybe dropping to London, maybe succeeding against London, drawing them close. Who knows? We'll have to see what Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde pulls out for Stage 2 for the Philadelphia fans. I believe this is 8. Don't let me lie. Yes, 8 is where we are at. Put a footnote. We're on Seoul Dynasty coming in. If we're talking about Winston players, who's more handsome than Fisher? Hopefully I'm getting that quote right. Don't kill me. I think he returns to that wheelhouse, and I think he's shown proficiency on Wrecking Ball as well, which is another pocket pick I think is going to be very relevant this minute as we get into some of my top spots. I think Seoul has looked good. Michelle has just absolutely blown expectations out of the water. He's come from a kind of forgetful role on Lucky Future and has shown to be able to succeed when put into a team that is very structured, has amazing callers. I think I was completely wrong about this team in my pre-evaluations. While I will say the season is not over, it seems to be going very well in the Seoul Dynasty camp. A lot of those problems that I predicted have not come to fruition. Great for them. Will that continue? I think so. Sorry, a little bit of brain delay. It's early. I think DPS-wise, we've got Fleta, Michelle, Munchkin. What can't they play? With the additions of Illicit and Highly, hopefully they can make it to LA in time, and this kind of gives them a 12-man roster, and now they can actually start to do in-house scrims with 2 separate teams, and that's very powerful. If they can actually get that to work, the sky's the limit for them in Season 2. I think if they can hit the ground running with an in-house engine, that's scary. That is potential top 5 team level performances there. We start to see them rotate in, especially in the playoffs for Stage 1. Yes. Putting in their control team that looked good. You started to see Marvel, Jae-Hong, Toby. I think that was right. Yeah. Don't quote me, but I think that's right. Having them, there's a clear delineation of like 2 separate teams here that are equal in skill, that can see movement around depending on the meta and depending on which map is depending on the meta and what map's being played at any given match. If they can get that engine rolling, I think Seoul's going to be very scary. I'm willing to say that I think Seoul makes stage playoffs again. I don't see any way that the schedule looks too rough. I don't know if I've gone over it, so I'm going to go over it again. Apologies for those audio listeners. We've got Gladiators, Vancouver, Dallas, Houston, Valiant, Vancouver again, and the Hangzhou Spark, which isn't too terrible for them. I've kind of pegged them at 4-3, possibly going 5-2 if they can take the win over the Gladiators at the season opener, which is going to be a tough ask for me at least. I think Gladiators peaked very late and should be doing better, I would say, this stage. But we'll get into them. Coming in at number 7, we've got the Guangzhou Charge. If we're talking about Wrecking Ball, if we're talking about weird DPS compositions, I think Charge are going to have an amazing stage here. Schedule-wise, they've got Paris, Shock back-to-back, Gladiators, Hangzhou Spark, Atlanta, and Houston. So again, not terrible. Got some, difficulties in the midweeks there. Shock back-to-back is going to be pretty interesting. But again, I don't think Guangzhou Charge is that bad of a team. I think they're a little bit slept on. And if we go back to those pillars, talk about flexibility. This is a team that's got it in strides. Talk about flex supports that are carry level. I think Shu's going to pop off, and excuse my language, is going to show the fuck up. This guy is going to be very impressive. He was impressive in Stage 1. If you haven't bought on the Shu train, get on now. Equally as much, Happy's going to have an amazing performance here. Hot, but being able to be flexible. I think it's almost overstated, but this Tracer pick of his, he can play Sombra. Historically, he's been very flexible. Same thing with Rio. Chara looks to be a strong leader for them. Everything points me in the direction that Guangzhou is going to have a very, very good stage here. It's their meta. They're flexible. They have these carry potentials. They meet all of my checklists. And again, I might have a terrible read on this. It could be GOATs again. I have no clue. But from all the information I've collected, my theory crafting, I think Guangzhou are within the top 10, and I think they're making playoffs this stage. I think it's an easy playoff berth for them. Joining them, another Chinese team. One team that I have very, very dear and close to my heart. It is the Chengdu Hunters. Where am I? At 6, I believe. Don't let me lie. Chengdu Hunters at 6. And it's shocking, to say the least. I think this is going to surprise some people. But if you look at the same things that I said about Guangzhou, those, if we're going back to that checklist, right? We're talking about flexibility. Chengdu Hunters got some flexibility to them. We're talking about skirmish meta. We're talking about some DPS. We're talking about triple DPS. Chengdu Hunters doing a lot of that stage 1. In a meta that they weren't supposed to, they were doing it and succeeding. Wrecking Ball coming in. Plays an Ameng. Orisa plays an Ameng again. Who knows what Ray and Ameng have up their sleeve? We could see a tankless composition for them, something that's been used before, you know, using that Hog Diva combo on maps like City Center on Oasis. That's a possibility. Plays into this Chinese style, plays into Ameng's wheelhouse. Historically, a pretty good Hog. Historically, has a lot of experience on Diva. Elsa, their flex tank. Is that right? Is his name Elsa? I can't ever keep it straight with some of these players. Ninja, Elsa, whatever he's calling himself these days. Their Diva player, historically in stage 1, has the potential to flex to Sombra, flex to Tracer. A lot of the Chinese flex supports. Kyo in particular. Gary, I think, never really played all that much DPS, but I think Kyo, for instance, is going to be able to play some of those DPS comps. This is their meta. I think out of anybody, this is the Chengdu Hunters. I think they're going to skyrocket, and that's why I have them so high up. Jinmu's going to be able to pair well with the Orisa. They've played together on teams previously. Mentioning Ameng and the Jinmu kind of duo there. Junkrat, Hanzo, Farah, very important, very historic pocket picks for him. Anything else? Here's a good one. While the meta is shifting, I think people are going to struggle to figure out what they want to do with this meta. I think we've seen so far that the Chengdu Hunters come in with a very clear style, a very clear identity, a very clear mentality, and they just oppress. They just do what they want, and you have to adapt to them. I don't know that teams are going to hit the ground running as quickly as Chengdu will. I think they're a team that does very well early in stages, and their style, their strategy may get figured out towards the end, especially when we go up against London. Chengdu versus London is going to be kind of that litmus test. But there again, I'm confident in saying that I think Chengdu Hunters makes stage playoffs. You look at the schedule. Paris, Washington, early on, I think those are wins. Shanghai could be rough, but I think in terms of a skirmish that I think this meta is going to kind of boil down to, I give it to not Shanghai, I give it to Chengdu. Gladiators is a different beast. Spark, who knows what Spark we get? You know, again, like I mentioned previously, this is a team that reportedly was playing weird stuff. Will they return to that? I think they will, but I don't know how it pairs out. People were surprised by it. Is it a stylistic thing? Who knows? Chengdu is making stage playoffs. You can quote me on it, I think. Not I think, I know. Enough I thinks. No more qualifying statements here. Well, that was 6, I believe. Chengdu at 6. So we've got the London Spitfire breaking our top 5. Florida, Atlanta, Philly, Boston, Paris, Chengdu, Houston. Not a terrible schedule for them. This is pretty light work. Atlanta could be difficult. Philly could be difficult. But other than that, again, another team that I have to give kudos to in terms of schedule. This shouldn't be too hard. If they don't make stage playoffs, I think that's more of a statement than making it. I think this is assuming that they should make stage playoffs here. When we look again at those pillars, at that checklist, talk about the main tanks. We have Orisa, we have Winston. 2 heroes that Gesture plays very, very well. If you don't remember his Orisa, go back and watch some of those final matches against Philadelphia, even in the semifinals. This was a pick that he plays well. In the finals, it was one of the edges that they had over Philadelphia where they played very well off of Gesture's halts. Who's playing well off of those halts? Prophet. Historically, these two married couple, this duo of Gesture and Prophet has historically been 2 of the most dominant forces. I guess 2 of them would be kind of a lie because I'm talking about them together. So it'd be they are right? They are one of the most dominant forces in all of Overwatch if they can play together, and this meta should allow them to. Kudos to Yiska for kind of coining this duo and that kind of main tank DPS synergistic tie-in. This is a meta that I think they can return to with that. If they can play DPS, if this is a DPS meta, they can let Prophet, and oddly enough, Birdring should probably be able to come back within this roster. They should do well. They should be able to pop off. I don't have any doubts on my mind there. Obviously, a little bit more bullish on Prophet. I think he's the staple here. Birdring, I don't know what's going on with him. It's actually sad to see such a staple veteran player in the Korean scene see such a decline. There again, Guard has filled his shoes very well, and I don't see, him faltering in any way. So if Birdring doesn't come in and have those DPS, bring the DPS level that I think he might need to, Guard's there and has shown to be a suitable replacement. There again, if we start to see some of the moats, floats, whatever you want to call it, that Winston Goats comp come back in, London looked much better late into stage 1. So as we're going into stage 2, they'd bring over some of that experience. Easy schedule. They should be okay, I think. I think this is a team that definitely makes stage playoffs for sure. You can, funnily enough, I haven't kept track of who I'm calling for stage playoffs and exactly how many teams I've said stage playoffs wise. So if I've mentioned more than, 8, feel free to chastise me. That's just silly of me. But I don't think I've said too many. I think I've only said 3 or 4. So hopefully that's the case. What time am I at? Oh boy, this is going to be a long video. Okay. Getting through this a little bit quicker. We've got the Gladiators at 4. Hopefully that's right. Gladiators at 4. Schedule-wise, they've got Shanghai, Seoul, Guangzhou Charge, Valiant, Florida, Chengdu, Boston. Not a terrible stage. I've only got them losing potentially 1 or 2 games. I think Shanghai, Seoul early is going to be a little bit difficult for them, but they've peaked towards the end of stage 1. They have a pretty easy schedule, especially late, so riding that momentum, I think they're going to shave off the map losses much better at the end of the stage. So again, Shanghai, Seoul are going to be a little bit difficult. Guangzhou Charge, a little bit difficult. I think they start that swing back with the Valiant. Florida should be easy. Chengdu, while I think they're going to do well, Gladiators, they've got Decay, they've got Surefour, they've got Hydration, very flexible. Shaz, I like him. I think he's good. I think he's going to do well this stage. Gladiators at 4. I said I was very bullish on them seasonally. I don't remember why I put them in stage 1 in terms of power rankings, but this is a team that are going to, I think it's going to rally around Decay. Roar can play Winston now. I think historically he's been more of a Winston player. Don't quote me on that. It could be a massive faux pas on my end, but I like Gladiators at 4. I think I'm very comfortable in saying that they're going to be within the top 5. And again, this is a stage playoff berth for them as well. New York at 3. We're getting in the top 3 here. Why do I have New York at 3? I don't know that their style is going to play all that well in this stage. They're calculated, they're methodical. Are they going to play well in a stage that has the kind of musings of being chaotic? I don't know. I don't think so. Do I think they're going to be all that bad? No. Schedule-wise, they've got Philadelphia, Shanghai, Washington, Florida, Philly, Atlanta to finish out that week 5 possibly. They play Atlanta back-to-back. Mono can return to the Winston. They have a deep DPS bench. Libero is going to have an amazing stage. I think he's going to play any hero they need. He is an absolute god. I am sad that nobody's actually picked him up yet. Somebody needs to shell out and buy this boy. Florida, I'm looking at you. If you want to have a turnaround in a stage, Saya player and Libero, they've played together before. Tie him in with Chris. I don't know. I'm just saying, throw the paycheck at it. You saw what Shock did. Is this the stage where we could see Flower? It's a possibility. If we need flexibility, if we need projectile, if it's going to be chaotic, Flower might be your guy. Say Bjolby again. Pine. they have this bench. You have these names. Nene coming back in. Talk about a Zarya performance. Check out that article I did statistic-wise. This kid had an amazing performance. New York, though, stylistically in this chaotic meta, I have my questions. I think they're going to do very, very good. I think they're making stage playoffs, no doubt. How far they go in those stage playoffs, we'll have to see. Animo, I have a gripe with you. What happened, man? What happened? I think all stage long, he was kind of absent-minded, fell flat, especially in the stage playoffs against Seoul. Their style needs to be a little bit more dynamic. You can't just be that slow, counter-punchy team, and if you are, it's got to be a lot more clean than what they've shown thus far. That's why I've got them at 3. Now, these first 2 spots I think could be interchangeable. I've got Shock at 2. They could easily be 1 in many other teams' power rankings. We'll get into why that is. But Shock at 2, schedule-wise, they have Valiant, Charge twice, Toronto, Spark, Philadelphia, Shanghai. Fairly easy for them, I think. And talk about a deep DPS bench. San Francisco have some of the best DPS on the market, and they're all just riding the bench, and this is going to be the stage that they flourish. Talking about Seoul and, their B team or, their A team, S team, whatever you want to call it, they have 2 very delineated teams here that are going to be able to scrim against each other and bounce ideas off of them. They have an amazing coaching staff. They have Rascal, who is kind of an unsung hero for this team, is the leader of the team, does a lot of calling. Moth, same way. I think he's more of a big picture macro caller where Rascal's, target, this, that, the other thing, very micro focused. 2 very, very large brained, very wrinkly brained individuals that don't get enough credit. Well coached. I think we could see a little bit more Nevix if this is going to be as flexible as I think it is. I think Nevix may get the nod over Choi in some instances, like Junkertown, for instance, which I think is in the map pool, if I'm not mistaken. You need flexibility. Violet on flex support's going to pop off. Super. Is his Winston as strong as his Ryan? I don't know. I have questions there. But all in all, Shock, they ended stage 1 with an absolute banger of a match and outperformed what I thought they were going to do. That was a statement for me, and I think they're going to do very well this stage. Easy playoff seed for them. They could even finish first, for all I know. This is a very, very scary team. Very, very terrifying. And in that sense, we talk about number 1, which, if you haven't figured it out by now, is the Titans. What do you say about them? Teamwork, easily the best in the league, without a doubt. Adaptability, you can't talk about it enough. I was worried about their match against the Shock. I had, Titans winning, of course, but the small changes, how they were handling things, being able to be stylistic while operating within the meta. I don't think this meta, if it is going to be this chaotic DPS, wrecking ball, monkey, whatever style, I think it's a possibility that you see Janu actually move into the wrecking ball, and that's where they play triple DPS with Bumper, coming back to his wheelhouse a little bit. They have all of the markings to be able to do well. I have a hair in my nose. I shouldn't have shaved before I did this. I think they're going to do well. I think intangibly, it's overstated, I will say. It is kind of overblown to a degree, but it is something you can't ignore, that this is a team that works together very well. Is this a meta that can facilitate that kind of style? I don't think so. But if there's a team that's going to break that paradigm and make, what is a chaotic meta at the bottom of the table be, very cohesive at the top of the table, with London, for instance, that duo. I think this is a team that doesn't have a duo, but is a team of just collectively working individuals that do very well with each other and can can become more than the sum of their parts, let alone being fantastic individuals. I will say I have my questions on their DPS. Haksal historically has been a little bit quick to pull the trigger. Stitch has been inconsistent over time. There are times where he looks on fire, amazing for a good amount of time. And there are times for a good amount of time where he just is kind of lackluster. But now they have Sominsu. God forbid they have to put in Hureg. I don't see that ever happening. Maybe in a Game 5 scenario it's possible. But all in all, this is the team that I'm putting at number 1. They had an amazing performance in Stage 1. I don't think it stops here. Welcome to the Titans Dynasty. And there you have it. It took me nearly an hour to get through all of Stage 2 and my power rankings. But a quick rundown. We've got 20 Florida Mayhem, 19 Houston Outlaws, 18 Washington Justice, 17 Los Angeles Valiant, 16 Paris Eternal, 15 Boston Uprising, 14 Atlanta Reign, 13 Hangzhou Spark, 12 Shanghai Dragons, 11 Dallas Fuel, 10 Toronto Defiant, 9 Philadelphia Fusion, 8 is Seoul Dynasty, Guangzhou Charge at 7, Chengdu Hunters at 6, Spitfire at 5, Gladiators at 4, NYXL at 3, Shock at 2, and Vancouver Titans at 1. Thank you for putting up with me for the last hour, and I'll just kind of copy and paste that list and put it in the description box, just in case you don't feel like listening to my drivel. Definitely follow my thoughts over at Twitter at VOLAMEL. That is Volamel on Twitter. And thanks for watching, and if you have any questions or want to roast me about my hot takes, let me know, and we can have it out in the comment section, okay? And hopefully there wasn't too many faux pas again. It is 6:14 a.m. I'm trying to get this out before the games today. Please be gentle on that front. But otherwise, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.